And then the next was Krishna, Vasudeva and Devaki's son. So he's nobody's son, but he appears because of their particular rasa, or type of affection, parental affection. Krishna doesn't need anybody to serve him, and he certainly doesn't need anyone to care for him like a little child that needs care from their parents. But he knows that there are persons that have that affection, and he appears as their son. So that's what we're going to be describing. It appears in Canto 8, and many chapters before his appearance is a description of a big battle between the demigods and the demons. As you know, the son of Hiranyakashipu, the king of the Asuras, was Prahlad. And Prahlad had a son, Virochana, and Virochana had a son named Bali Maharaj. So Bali was in the line of Prahlad, but his descendancy or lineage was in the Daitya dynasty, or the demon of the lineage of demons. Now Prahlad was not, and Bali in his heart of hearts was not, but he was the leader of that group. And so he was leading a battle that took place between the demigods and the demons. This is a BBT painting of that battle. It's pretty wild. And in the course of the battle, Bali was killed. Not only he was defeated, but he was killed. But the spiritual master of the demons was Shukracharya. He brought him back to life. So you can only imagine, Bali was pretty indebted to Shukracharya. He became very loyal to him, very devoted to him, and vice versa. Shukracharya wanted to do more and more nice things for his very qualified devotee, Bali Maharaj. So he arranged for him to do a Vishvajit Yagya. Vishva means universe, and Jitta means to conquer. It was a massive yagya whereby he could become the conqueror of the Vishva, or universe. Just like from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11 is the universal form chapter. But in Sanskrit, it's Vishvarup, the universal form, Vishva. So Vishvajit means a yagya to conquer the universe. It was massive, and right from the fire arose a chariot drawn by horses, a flag, a bow, armor, and 2 quivers of inexhaustible arrows. That was pretty good, right out of the fire. And at the yagya, his grandfather, Prahlad Maharaj, arrived, and he gifted him an eternal garland of flowers, and Shukracharya, his spiritual master, gave him a conch shell. So it was a successful Vishvajit Yagya. So guess what? They wanted to test it out. So the demons came again for a big battle with the demigods, and when Indra saw them approaching, he was struck with wonder. The Bhagavatam says it looked as if the army would swallow the sky and burn all directions. So you can't swallow the sky or burn all directions. It was massive. So Indra wanted to know what to do. He didn't immediately start battle, but Indra wanted to know what to do. So he consulted his spiritual master, Brahaspati. Brahaspati is the spiritual master of the demigods. And Brahaspati's advice was don't fight Bali. He's too powerful. He has this potency from a special yajna. And the best thing for you to do is disappear. Make yourself invisible, and you and all the other demigods just not vaporize, but become invisible and leave. So Bali took over not only heaven, but Indra's whole planet, the king of heaven, and he was ruling the universe from the heavenly realm. Shukracharya was very proud of his really qualified disciple, and so he engaged him in 100 Ashvamedha yajnas. Now, Shukracharya is in the line of Bhrigu. So that's a whole lineage description of how that happened. 100 Ashvamedha yajnas is the same formula that Indra used to become Indra. So Bali is reproducing that same path. And Indra's mother was in big anxiety because the mother of Indra is Aditi. Kashyapa and Aditi became the mother and father of Vamana, but before, Vamana was the youngest brother. Before them were 11 other brothers, and one of them was Indra. So Aditi went to her good husband, Kashyapa, and cried her eyes out and said what to do. So she was very qualified. She's sometimes called a goddess. And he gave her instruction what to do. There's a certain austerity, very difficult, so she asked for the details, and she carefully followed the details. It's called the Payo Vrata Yajna, or austerity, or ceremony. She followed it perfectly under her qualified husband's direction. And at the end, as you see in the painting, Lord Vishnu appeared. And she offered prayers. She appealed to him, please help me, help my sons regain their kingdom of heaven. And he agreed. I'll not only help you, I'll appear as your son. And there's a nice description in Srimad Bhagavatam where Kashyapa was in a trance of meditation, and in his trance of meditation you could see that a plenary portion of the personality of Godhead entered within him, because he's going to become the father, and Aditi is going to become the mother. So I'm going to read a couple of verses, starting with, let's see. No, that comes later. Yeah, it comes later. So this is when he appeared. The same as our particular Manu, Vaivasvata Manu, but a previous yuga in Vaivasvata Manu's reign. So this is Kali Yuga, and the previous yuga was what? Treta Yuga, right? Excuse me, Krishna's appearance was in Dwarpa Yuga. His appearance was the previous yuga, Treta Yuga. So, he appeared as the son of Kashyapa and Aditi. We're going to hear a description of his appearance, his features. There's Kashyapa in the painting and his wife Aditi, and Vamana becomes their son. So from chapter, when Lord Brahma saw that Aditi was pregnant and he understood very similar to when Devaki was pregnant and the demigods came and offered prayers, right? Within the prison house of Kamsa. So here's from the Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 17. When Brahma understood that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, O King, as the wind, so this is Shukadeva Goswami discussing with Maharaj Parikshit. As the wind promotes friction between two pieces of wood and thus gives rise to fire, Kashyapa Muni, whose transcendental position was fully absorbed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, transferred his potency into the womb of Aditi. Now there's, in our Acharya's commentary, they don't get like how it works, they say how it doesn't work. The transmission of a potency from male to female that creates pregnancy has a certain procedure, a biological reproduction procedure. But it's not the same when the appearance of the personality of Godhead. It's like in Krishna's appearance, Krishna appeared in the mind of Vasudeva. He was transferred to the mind of Devaki and into the womb of Devaki, like that. It wasn't, you can say, immaculate conception. It wasn't the normal way of conception. So similarly, when the Lord appears, it's not the ordinary method. It's a transcendental transmission of his potency, spiritual potency, to Aditi. When Brahma understood that the Supreme Personality of Godhead was within the womb of Aditi, he began to offer prayers to the Lord by reciting transcendental names. No, he doesn't just saying names, there's verses that he spoke. The Srimad Bhagavatam is filled with the names of the Supreme Lord. So sometimes we hear, often we hear, the means for achieving perfection in the age of Kali is what? Harir Nama, Harir Nama, Harir Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nastyeva, Nastyeva, Nastyeva Katiranyata. So that means you don't have to read Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Just chant the holy name. Well, good news, the Bhagavatam is filled with the holy name. And not only the name, but the qualities and the form and the pastimes and the loving relationships that the Supreme Lord has with his devotees, like in this case, with Kashyapa and Aditi. So now let's hear about his form. And when he appeared, he didn't appear like babies normally do, in umbilical cord and the whole scene, bloody mess and the whole thing. Here's how he appeared. After Lord Brahma had spoken, glorifying the Supreme Lord's activities and prowess, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is never subject to death, like an ordinary living being, appeared from the womb of Aditi. His four hands were adorned with a conch, disc, club, and lotus. He was dressed in yellow garments, and his eyes appeared like the petals of a blooming lotus. The body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, blackish in complexion, was free from all inebrities. His lotus face decorated with earrings. Most children aren't born with earrings. Resembling sharks, appeared very beautiful, and on his bosom was the mark of Srivatsa. He wore bangles on his wrists, armlets on his arms, a helmet on his head, a belt on his waist, a sacred thread across his chest, and ankle bells decorating his lotus feet. an uncommonly beautiful garland of flowers decorated his bosom, and because the flowers were extremely fragrant, a large group of bees, making their natural humming sounds, invaded them for honey. When the Lord appeared, wearing the Kaustuba gem on his neck, his effulgence vanquished the darkness in the home of Prajapati Daksha. At that time, there was happiness in all directions. In the reservoirs of water, like the rivers and oceans, and in the core of everyone's heart, the various seasons displayed their respective qualities, and all living entities in the upper planetary system, in outer space, and on the surface of the earth were jubilant. The demigods, the cows, and the brahmanas, and the hills and mountains were all filled with joy. And it speaks of the constellation of stars that realign themselves to make everything very auspicious. There's some further description. Wearing a belt made of munja grass. Here it doesn't show him with forearms, but that's okay. An upper garment of deerskin and a sacred thread, and carrying in his hands a danda and an umbrella. So he's got both of those in one hand. And a water pot, or kamandalu. Lord Vamana appeared in the sacrificial arena of Maharaj Bali. So it doesn't say how long it took for him to get from birth to appearing at the yajna of Maharaj Bali, but we just heard he had already done 100 Ashramedha yajnas, and that creates auspiciousness for the performer and for those who are participating, etc. Here's some very beautiful paintings, different art style, different periods of time. There's his kamandalu in one hand, his umbrella in the other. And here it shows him in a golden color, but we heard he's a dark color. It's like the sky, like monsoon cloud. Here's some carvings on architecture of Lord Vamana. He looks quite happy here. And Bali Maharaj welcomed Vamana Dev to the sacrificial arena. One of the really nice parts of this, the meeting of the two, because Bali, like his grandfather, is a devotee at heart. But because he's in the Daitya assembly, and he's supposed to be the king of the Daitya group, he's carrying on like he's a Daitya, or in the demoniac group or clan. So when he sees Vamana approaching from the distance, it's like it's early in the morning, because yajnas are often done early. It's an auspicious time with astrological and astronomical calculation. When is an auspicious time? Commonly it's very early in the morning. And it was as if there was a second sun appearing on the horizon. So it was, everyone saw this really bright light then approaching them. And as he came closer and closer, he saw this really beautiful little, the word Vamana means dwarf, of short stature. I mean, like a midget is our English word. He was a midget, or a dwarf, or Vamana. And his features were very beautiful. And Bali was very charmed. So everything stopped. And he was feeling really grateful, because when there are, when a sacrifice is being, when any activity is being performed, if there are sadhus present, then it makes auspiciousness for that event. And the more the merrier. So he was really happy. And immediately his heart went out Now there's many paintings of their meeting, and this is one of them, a nice one. He shows Bali is washing the hand of Vamana, the dwarf Brahmana. It's a very nice painting. And seated next to him, who is seated next to him? Huh? Bali's wife, and some versions say his sister. And what's her name? I can't follow. Vindhyavali? Okay. Who later became Putana? Bali's sister. There's a nice piece to the mystery. Vindhyavali is his wife, and Bali's sister. Her name? Starts with an R, and I can't remember it right now. Well, that's nice, because the versions that I've read is some say it's his wife, and some say it's his, some say it's his daughter, some say it's his sister. That's the difference. Okay, sitting next to him is his queen. Vindhyavali? Vindhyavali. Very nice. Okay, here's another. He's doing the same with a special pot. He's offering sacred water. Here he's doing the same. Although he's a Vamana, he's a dwarf, there's somebody behind him who looks even shorter in stature than him. And Bali is very happy, ready to offer him anything. He provides a special seat, and you see dressed in blue there, with his red dhoti, that's Bali, and arguing with Bali, and directly in front of him is who? Shukracharya. Because Shukracharya has enough quality or character to understand this isn't just a dwarf, this is Vishnu. And you know what? Vishnu is going to take everything from you. So don't make him any promises. But, Bali wanted to give any charity at all that he wanted. They had a disagreement. He advised him, don't surrender to Vishnu. Now that's not a good thing to advise somebody to do. But he had his reasons. He'll take everything. And then if he takes everything, then you won't be able to do yajnas anymore. And if you can't do yajnas anymore, I won't get my family maintenance anymore. Because he was depending upon the natural thing that happens when one performs sacrifices or rituals. One receives some dakshin from the performer. And so he's presenting different arguments. And he's, Brahmanas can be very clever. There's different versions of what he said. But one version is, he said, you didn't say Om. You already promised him, yeah, but you didn't say Om, so you don't have to do it. And he gave other, very clever arguments. But Bali disobeyed. Said if he's Vishnu and he takes everything, that's just fine because it belongs to him anyways. And then I'll have the opportunity to offer everything to Vishnu. He's the example in our scriptures of one who surrenders everything. Atma Nivedana. Atma Nivedana means it's one of the 9 processes of bhakti, offering everything. It's Bali. So he offered everything. He said, well, whatever you'd like. And he said, I'm Brahmin, I don't need. Well, take something. I'll give you half my kingdom, or, whatever you like. And, well, you're enthusiastic to offer something, I'll take 3 paces of land. And he looked at his legs and said, 3 paces of land, that's nothing. They're so short. So that's all they require. So, you know what happened. You probably, all month you've been hearing this, but it's been focused on Bali, or Vamana. He expanded himself into a gigantic form. That's the first thing he did. He gradually covered the entire surface of the world, and by extending his body, he covered the entire sky. With his hands, he covered all directions. And that was the first step. And with his second footstep, he covered the entire upper planetary system. Therefore, there was no vacant space or place where he could take his third step. Problem, right? Because he's promised 3 paces of land. So, gigantic body. Everyone was astonished. Can you imagine? A little dwarf becomes as far as you can see in space. A nice deity. This is actually a deity form of Vamana. If you look closely at the very bottom, you'll see little Vamana with his umbrella over his head. And there's Bali making his offering. And you see where his left toe is. That's Lord Brahma at the very top of that deity. And the consort of Vamana, Shri and Bhu Devi. Another nice painting. There's Bali offering his prayers. To his right, over his shoulder, is Shukracharya saying, "Don't do it." And at the very top of that nice painting is Lord Brahma. So his foot went above the abode of Brahma, pierced the coverings of the universe, and this is the beginning of the descent of the sacred Ganges. And that's a whole other narration of how the sacred Ganges descends into this world, but it starts with this one. So there's the throne that Vamana was seated, and now he wants to put his third step somewhere. He promised me 3 steps. What to do? So Bali offered his head. And so he did. He placed his foot on his head. It's such a celebrated pastime. There's many very beautiful paintings. Now, Bali, he's now, previous, just a moment ago, Bali was the proprietor of the 3 worlds, upper, middle, lower planetary systems. He was in charge, he was the ruler. But now he's given it all to Vamana. So Vamana said, "You violated your promise. What kind of king are you? Tie him up." And so under his order, in front of everybody, right in this big assembly, he was tied up like a criminal. And when something like that happens in a public assembly, there's going to be different opinions. And people, there's a whole section in this chapter where people were saying, "Why did he do that? And that was wrong." And, you know, Prahlad Maharaj came, and Prahlad said, "Very good, very good, very good." Then Vamana spoke, and he expressed that he did this to show the glories of Bali. That such a surrendered devotee will never protest, even if they're put in a difficult circumstance. Now, maybe some of you have never been put in a difficult circumstance, but probably most of us have. And when you're put in a difficult circumstance, you may scratch your head and say, "Why?" You know, that classic, "Why do bad things happen to good people?" That one. Like, why? So in this case, it's very specific that Vamana wanted to show the world Just see the quality of this Bali. He not only surrendered everything of the material side, he surrendered his ego. He surrendered everything. He surrendered himself. If Vamana wants to tie me up, fantastic. So let me just read 2 or 3 verses that explain what Vamana is expressing here. Bali Maharaj had become the most famous among the demons and non-believers, for in spite of being bereft of all material opulence, he's fixed in his devotional service. Although bereft of all its riches, fallen from his original position, defeated and arrested by his enemies, rebuked and deserted by his relatives and friends, although suffering the pain of being bound, and although rebuked and cursed by his spiritual master, Bali Maharaj, being fixed in his vow, did not give up his truthfulness. It was certainly with pretension that I spoke about the religious principles, but he did not give up his religious principles, for he is true to his word. Nice, huh? That's Vamana speaking. He's explaining to everybody why he did what he did. And there's a very nice purport. I'll read a section. Yeah. This was not an ordinary test. This is Prabhupada. As described in this verse, hardly anyone could survive such a test. But for the future glorification of Bali Maharaj, one of the Mahajans, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not only tested him, but also gave him the strength to tolerate such adversity. The Lord is so kind to his devotee that when severely testing him, the Lord gave him the necessary strength to be tolerant and to continue to remain a glorious devotee. So I don't know if our tests are going to be as extreme as what Bali is being put through here. But we can be put through some difficult tests, to our capacity in any case. And there's a nice verse. I often refer to it because devotees are going through tests, and it helps to have some reference in scripture to understand what's going on. It's from Brahma Samhita, and I'll just say the verse slowly, and you may recognize the verse. Yas tvindra gopam atavendra maho svakarma bandhanurupam palabhajanam atunoti karmani nirdehitu kintu cha bhakti bhajam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Nice sounding. And the meaning is 2 parts. There's 3 parts. Govindam adi purusham, I worship Govinda, who gives the karma to all living entities, from Indra down to a little germ and everything in between, appropriate for the individual, their just deserve. And Bhakti Bhajam, for those who are engaged in devotional service unto me, I have a different rule. The different rule is I remove from the root. Let's change it. I remove from the root the very cause of their material existence, or specifically, the cause of fruitive activity. Fruitive activity is a word that Prabhupada used a lot, and it's his translation of the word karma. Karma, or fruitive activity, means passion. You do something to get something. And that's everybody. Who doesn't do something to get something, a result? Who does things without any purpose of a result? Well, a madman may do that, or a drunkard may do that. He doesn't know what he's doing. There's no purpose. He's just. But bhakti, which also has a very different translation, commonly translators translate bhakti as devotion, right? And devotion means something you feel. But Prabhupada translated as devotional service, something you do with feeling, but it's practical activity. Rishikena, Rishikesha, Sevanam, practical activity. And it's not with fruitive intention. I mean, there's a tendency to do devotional service with the fruitive intention, do something to get something. But really, beyond, on the other side of fruitive activity, or the other side of material activity, or nirvana, cessation of material activity is the meaning of nirvana. That's where bhakti begins. There can be the practice of bhakti, but that's where bhakti begins. That's where pure bhakti begins. So Bali was at that stage. He was a pure devotee. And Krishna, people may not have recognized it. He did, or Vamana recognized it. And so to say that he put him to a test wasn't that Vamana didn't know, because he's omniscient, but he wanted the world to know. So sometimes we may feel Krishna's testing me. You ever had that feeling? And it's not exactly that Krishna doesn't know. Krishna knows. But he's doing this thing that the Brahma Samhita verse says. He's helping, he's giving you an opportunity through some difficulty, through some circumstance, to get on the other side of material tendencies, fruitive tendencies. Fruitive tendencies are born from ignorance. That's what the commentary of that Brahma Samhita verse says. The root of ignorance is ignoring Krishna, then comes all the little baby ignorances that are from mother ignorance, the ignorant ignoring Krishna. So it's an opportunity. Krishna's testing you is to give, he knows, but to give you an opportunity to say yes to him and say no to forgetting him. You continue to deal with the situation with mindfulness of Krishna, or Krishna consciousness. That kind of test, to strengthen your bhakti muscle, gives you an opportunity to do some of these. Some exercises with your bhakti muscle, so that you can become stronger. Your bhakti can become stronger, that kind of test. And he gives the strength. When you're ready, he'll give the required, whatever it is, strength. It's right in its purport. And one who lives their life that way recognizes it. That's our Krishna connection, our bhakti connection with Krishna. He reciprocates. It's not always smooth and free from bumps. Sometimes there's bumps. Sometimes there's like a head-on collision or something. But Krishna's always there helping his devotee. Here's a nice deity form or sculpture of Vamana. Here he has 6 arms. And there he has 6 arms. So the way this pastime concludes is, Vamana consented, all your opulence is taken, but you know what? I'm going to give you a place to reside that has even greater opulence than heaven. And that's this planet called Sutala. Sutala is not a hellish planet. Those of you that are a little bit aware of the structure of the universe from the Vedic conception, shh. There's 7 lower and 7 upper planetary systems, right? 14 total. Yes? You've heard this before, right? Okay. And the 7 below, Sutala is one of them. It's showing, this is a picture, a painting of the universal form with the lower 7 planetary systems shown. Below the feet of that universal form is the hellish region, that little thin thing that he's standing on. And there's 28 planets down there. But above that is the lower planetary systems, and they have greater opulence than the heavenly planets. Which maybe sounds baffling, but that's the description in the Bhagavatam. So Vamana placed him in the planet Sutala and said, don't worry, I'll protect you. In fact, I'm going to offer you my Sudarshan Chakra, or I'll instruct my Sudarshan Chakra. If anybody comes and tries to give you a problem, my Sudarshan Chakra will get him. There's one of the versions of Ramayana that's very, very celebrated, is one time Ravana, knowing that he had to face Ram in combat, went to Sutala to see if he could get Bali's help, because he knew Bali was really powerful. So he went to Bali's abode. And Vamana wouldn't let him in. And, you know, Ravana is very rude. He didn't take no for an answer. So Vamana kicked Ravana with his toe and sent him flying in the air for 10,000 yojanas distance. He kept his word. Vali was being praised because he kept his word. Vamana also keeps his word for Bali. And Krishna also keeps his word for his devotee, and that's us. Chipram bhavati dharmatma. Krishna, for those persons who have taken shelter of him, he gives protection. He gives protection against any reversal that may come, any obstacle may come, his protection is there. The obstacle may roll on for a while, but the protection is always there. And the devotee knows that and feels that. It's not that you're never going to stub your toe or, have a broken arm or get COVID-19 because you're a devotee. We wear masks and we do things that we're supposed to do to protect ourselves. But ultimately, we're dependent upon the Supreme Lord's protection. And if he takes somebody, because it does happen, we're all going to be leaving our body one day, someday. It's not, you'll never stub your toe and you'll never die and you never have a problem because you're surrendered to Krishna. But his protection goes at a deeper level than just on the surface material level. His protection is always there. So that's a little discussion on the topic I was asked to speak about, Vamana Dev. Now, if some of you are new, is anybody here that's new, and this is all like over your head? No? Anybody in that position? Okay, good. Anyone want to add something to this, or ask a question, or make some comment? Or are you ready for prasadam? Okay, looks like we're ready for prasadam. Ready for announcements? Oh, you have something? Okay, announcements.
Yeah. I can let them know about prasadam. It will be served in the lobby. You can have boxed prasadam at 6:30 onwards. So here's an opportunity. You want to ask any questions, please feel free to ask Maharaj. No.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.